BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. In this episode of the Business Coaching Success Podcast, I'm going to talk about three specific reasons of why we prevent ourselves from either starting or moving forward. Okay. Now, obviously, we're talking mostly about, building a successful coaching business, but this really goes hand in hand in life in general. But there's three things that I want you to consider that you may be sabotaging your own self. And so a quick story. And if you've listened to any of our podcasts, and if you've followed me at all, you know I like to tell stories and bring analogy to the conversation. So over the weekend, we got a new to us refrigerator for our garage, right? So first world problems. And this one has the ability, unlike our old one, to do ice and water dispenser. So we put it in there, and first thing one of my kids says is, "Oh, great, we'll be able to, have ice and water in the garage." And I'm like, well, actually, no, we don't have the ability to do that because we don't have a water source, a water line in our garage. And so that was met with well, that's kind of, why would we get a refrigerator and we can't even use it? And why can't we have water and ice? I'm like, well, it's not possible because there's no water line. There's no way to get a water line in our garage. And I began to think about that statement because for about 10 years, I've told myself that it was impossible to have a water line in the garage. I just didn't think it was possible. And sort of is this. I began to think, and because the wall that the refrigerator backs up to, part of that wall was the crawl space in our home. We live in Tennessee. A lot of homes here have crawl spaces. So I'm not a plumber. I'm not that handy. I can do some things. But I got under a house and saw, hey, I actually can tie into a line and punch it right through that wall right there with the right tools. And boom, we would have a water line, have a water source, and be able to have ice and water in our garage. And so we did that. And I called a couple of friends, looked at some instructional videos on YouTube, as we all do at times, and went to Lowe's, asked some questions about some folks there, got the supplies, put it all together, turned the water back on because I had obviously to drain all the lines out of the home. Turned it on, and the whole thing exploded. And essentially, I did not have the right part that I needed when I was inside the garage, on the inside of the garage. Turned the water back off, went back to Lowe's, found the right part, came back, put it on there, and it worked fine. And now we have a functioning refrigerator with ice and water, which I know may be simple for a lot of people, but for me, that was a huge victory. What in the world is the point of this? Because I told myself a false narrative that it was impossible to actually have a water source, a water line in the garage. And it got me to thinking about life. It got me thinking about building a successful business coaching business as a believer. Upon what am I doing? And I want to encourage you the same. What are you doing? Where the things that you believe, you actually don't know, but you've made assumptions and you're living off of those assumptions, and they're causing you pain and preventing the future that you want to have. Think about that just for a moment. What are those things in your own life that you're telling yourself, that's not possible, I can't do that, I don't have that ability, I don't have that skill set? So here are three reasons that I want to share with you to encourage you to potentially help you get a nudge to get started and or to get unstuck. Number one is the incorrect thoughts about the process, and certainly being completely wrong, just like I was about the water line. But maybe you're thinking about that from a coaching perspective, and you're like, I don't have that skill set. People will not trust me. People will not believe me. I'm not good with this. I'm not good with that. It's not possible to actually get paid to coach businesses. And the list goes on and on and on and on. But think about what that may be how that could be sabotaging you. And so what do? Well, number one, you got to educate yourself. I could have simply solved my own issue years ago by just finding out. That's all I needed to do. And whether that's in, specific training, one-on-one coaching for you, getting around people, but there is an option. There's always an answer. You just need to push yourself to go do it. And you want to validate the assumptions that you have. You may not be completely wrong about some of them, but don't just assume them and let that be. You want to validate them, and then you want to adapt and evolve. All right. By simply saying that, in my case, I made a mistake, house exploded, not the house exploded. The water line had kind of exploded on me. And water was all over the garage, right? Now I could have said, this will not work, but I'm like, okay, I obviously don't have the right thing. I need to go get it and figure out what it is, because I didn't know. I don't have this experience. So I went back, searched online, and thankfully, I did say a prayer, Lord, please help me put my hands on the right part, because I have yet to find it. And I was able to. And so it's super important. So that's the first thing, is stop thinking of the incorrect your thoughts about the process. The second one that's stopping you from starting and moving forward is fear of failure. Probably the biggest in life. Why most people don't get to where they want to go is they simply are fearful, and they're literally planting their feet. It's like cement, right? We've put our feet in cement and they've dried, and we just, we're so scared to try to move forward. So what do you do about it? Well, number one, I know no other way other than embracing a growth mindset. But look, starting a coaching business, you're going to make mistakes. It may take longer for some than others. The things that you didn't realize or even know about, you're going to know, and it's going to change and alter how you're going to do things, right? You're going to go through these things. Well, you have a choice on how you walk through that journey, okay? You can have a limited believing mindset, or you can embrace a growth mindset. It just simply means that, a limited mindset says, well, when something doesn't go right, let's say you go to a networking group and, you weren't able to make any connections. Well, that doesn't work. Like, no, that's a limited mindset. A growth mindset says, okay, that didn't work like I wanted it to. This is what I did. I'm going to discover and try to get some education on what maybe I did wrong, and I'm going to adapt and I'm going to change that, right? And you stay in that lane of having a growth mindset no matter what happens, because you have, and I have, the power to choose. Second thing you want to do is set realistic goals. One of the best ways to embrace fear is to take imperfect action. And I'm not suggesting that to be what's the word I'm looking for? Unprofessional. But you don't know what you don't know until you start doing it. So you want to take imperfect action, and you want to have some goals. So let's say it this way. If the journey for you, let's say that you're going to initiate some joint ventures, or that's the desire that you have. Well, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to initiate, some joint ventures. You need to set some goals of like, okay, well, how many joint venture relationships do you want to have? Do you want to have 2? Do you want to have 10? Let's say that was your goal for the remainder of the year. It's September of 2023. Between now and the December 31st, I want to have 10 joint venture relationships between accountants, financial planners, business brokers, and so on. Well, you want to set a goal to say, I want those 10. Well, what am I going to do to actually get those 10? And you continue to walk that goal backwards. And that's where a lot of people, because they don't do that, what happens is they go and have a couple of conversations, they don't work, and you put yourself in the position of believing the fear that you already felt. The other way to get out of fear is accountability partners. That is surrounding people. I think it's Jim Rohn that says that you're the sum of the 5 people that you're around the most. So if you're not surrounding yourself with people who can lift you up, who can pray with you, who can encourage you, who can give you some solid insights. I won't call it advice necessarily, but certainly insights. If you don't have those, I'm telling you, the days that you just don't feel like doing it, you're not going to do it because you don't have a solid footing with your relationships. Look, I believe that God created us to have community. It's super important to make sure that you're following those principles and having accountability partners. And then the third thing we talked about is a lack of willingness to follow a process. That's a huge reason of why we don't get started and don't achieve the things that we really want to achieve. And it's, I hear this all the time talking to coaches, especially ones that don't have a lot of experience. And by the way, we all do a version of this in life where we just simply either we have this arrogance about us that I know better or I can do it better. Or, we've seen others go before us and we question the process. They're the successful ones, but we're like, no, that's not going to work. And while there's by far different ways to, skin a cat, if you will, it's if you don't have a process, you think about it. I believe that God loves process. You go back and look what his instructions were for Noah in building the ark. Is proof enough that process matters. And even when he got the ark built, he gave him instructions on the process of getting the animals. And so we follow some of those biblical principles of wanting to make sure to follow a process, whether that's for you establishing a routine. There's the saying, what gets scheduled gets achieved. And I do believe that. What does routine look like for you? If you're following up with prospects, if you're going to networking events, if you're, keeping in touch with your clients, routine is super important. Routine is the bedrock of mastery. Repetition, that's the word I was looking for. Repetition is the bedrock of mastery. And the more that you have, and I'm not saying be mundane about it, I'm saying that you understand that discipline has a place in your life. And the more that you will entertain and interact and build your plans based upon discipline, you will see significant success. You want to measure, you want to, and kind of, refine the process. The process you start out with today, it doesn't mean that you just want to change things for the sake of changing because you woke up today with the shiny object syndrome. It says that I'm identifying the process and I'm okay to make sure this is working, I'm keeping that. This is not working, I'm getting rid of that. Because if you continue to do the same thing over and over and you're not getting where you want to go, hello, that's the definition of insanity, as you have heard. But you want to make sure that you have documentation of that process so you can really verify it in the end. So when you learn to harness those three areas, stop thinking incorrect thoughts that you don't know. When you begin to build action plans to deal with the fear, because fear is real for everyone, if you had kids, having that very first kid and bringing them home from the hospital, there was how's this going to work? I don't know anything about parenting, which I always thought was interesting. There's zero instruction books, but we do it, right? Because we make it happen. And certainly stop having a lack of willingness to follow a process. I will say quickly, years ago, the very first business that I started in the early 90s, I was very much of a free bird. I didn't like process at all. I didn't like structure at all. And we had a retail store. It opened at 10 o'clock in the morning. I might have got there at 9:59 a.m. to unlock the doors. Half the time, people were waiting on the doors to be open, meaning I was barely there. And over the years, as I've gotten older, I began to really understand the value of following a process and not having to really think about things once I know things are well defined. So there you go. You got some homework to do. And I want to leave you with just asking the question for yourself based upon what I've shared with you today is how is this going to affect you? In other words, where only you can answer the question. If you're aspiring to start a coaching business, or if you have started but you're not where you want to be, there is root reasons as to why. Only you can dig into those roots to find out what they are and go take action to solve them. Stop thinking about them every single day and doing nothing about it. Action is where it happens. Pray that God would order your steps very clear that he will do that if we invite him into the process, right? And so I want to encourage you with that today. Perhaps you do want to start a coaching business, or maybe you have started one, and again, you're just not where you want to be, and it's just you're kind of confused in the process. This is what we do. We give seasoned Christian men a done-for-you 6-figure business coaching system. And if you're curious about it, you'd like to learn more about it, just go to businesscoachmastery.com. That's businesscoachmastery.com, and they'll have some information there. You can even schedule a quick chat. We can talk about where you're at, your goals, and I can give you some insights about where you are on your coaching journey. Okay? Until next time, take care.